Welcome to Black and White TV. Thank you so much for joining us. If it's your first time, welcome. If you're coming back, welcome back.
Yeah.
My name is Jamila Millette.
My name is Sean Cooper.
Yes, and at Black and White TV, we discuss various topics that tend to divide our countries.
Right.
They're very black and white. And then we find the gray or color or something, right? And that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Every day.
So, however way you're listening, thanks for joining us. You can help us out actually by liking, subscribing, sharing, following. What else can you do?
I don't know what else. Smiling.
All the
at
things.
the camera.
All the things.
If you smile, we feel that.
Yeah, and thank you to all those that do listen and give us comments. And we talk to many of you out in the community. And we're so grateful for the conversations that continue to happen. So
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yes. All right. So what are we talking about today?
So we are talking about the 6 principles that we actually go into the schools and teach. We do all these workshops.
Yes.
And so we started off this year by going into some of what we do at those workshops. But before we get there.
So this is a series.
Right?
You're in a series.
A little series.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about one of the key principles.
Oh.
How to listen intensely.
Intensely. You see this when you have the... Well, they can't see it if they're listening.
Okay, but before we get there, let's talk about at least one particular way we do not listen very intensely.
Let's start with how don't we listen?
Right? So have you ever found yourself in a situation where you are seeing somebody out and about, maybe
you're in the streets.
Maybe at the mall.
Okay.
Maybe at the
You're
movie
at the
theater.
mall. Okay.
And they're coming to you. They recognize you. They yell out your name.
They yell even.
They come to you.
It sounds aggressive.
And you realize you do not know their name. You can't remember their name.
Yes, I have experienced that many, maybe too many times.
So do you have a strategy for how you...
There's a couple things. It depends on the scenario, right? So if this is a social gathering and there is a person who is also new and they don't know this person, then I say, introduce yourselves, silly people, and they will.
Right. If they catch your...
That's a strategy.
Yeah.
There's also the, hey girl, I do that.
Right.
I do that number.
Yeah. It's I find it very difficult. I mean, it's uncomfortable. One, because sometimes it's not that you have met this person once or twice before.
Right.
Sometimes you might have met them a whole number of times.
Right. I will not forget your face, but I will forget your name.
Right.
Very easily.
Yeah.
It's kind
challenging.
of difficult. What do you do, Sean?
Yeah, I do a similar technique where I start like...
You say, hey girl?
Hey girl! I always start there. That sort of diffuses a lot of things. It confuses them, it troubles them. Sometimes they just walk away and then that whole scenario is deflected. No, I usually do the same thing, like as I see them coming, if I'm with somebody that also potentially knows them. Okay. Like, hey, I just can't remember their name. What is it real quick?
That's Devil Wears Prada.
With my wife, sometimes she'll just like superhumanly fast go onto Facebook or something.
Oh my god!
Because she thinks she kind of remembers, but not really. And
this sounds like a sitcom.
You can retrieve a name that way.
That's clever. Well. So you just do you Google the person.
We do fast research.
Just Google them.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then we have one of our uniters who has been a producer here. She does this weird thing where she'll just tell the truth.
Yeah. And she's like, why don't you just be honest?
Yeah, she's like,
really? That's a thing?
She's like, I'll just say, hey, I don't remember your name.
Right.
Tell me your name again.
Yeah.
And we were like, what?
Oh yeah, that's that approach.
That's
the direct approach.
That's crazy.
Which works if it's somebody that you've only met once. The problem is it's kind of insulting.
No, I think she said she's
well,
okay.
she's not afraid to insult her. Because if it's somebody you've met like 4 or 5 times, then it's sort of...
No, it's hurtful. We're trying to preserve the feelings here for both parties.
Yeah, she doesn't care.
Both prides should be hurt.
Like, I'm going to hurt you, but I'm going to know your name.
Yeah, she's going to know the name.
Yeah.
And there is something about that, like when you first meet someone and you're like, hi, my name is Fa-la-la. And then they're like, hi, my name is Fa-la-la. And then you immediately forget it.
Right.
There's a whole thing about that.
Right. Well, the people who are good at it,
Yeah.
it's impressive.
They do like associations
Right.
immediately and then they have it. Yeah. I think those people are magical.
They are.
And wonderful.
Well, it's a big deal too. I mean, because names are so important
Names are important.
our value, our identity. So that's where I feel bad when I don't remember somebody's name. Is it's not just a fact; it's their name. It's part of their identity.
When people forget my nickname, I have less grace for them.
Yeah.
Because it's a letter.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's J. That's easy.
Well, you also, I mean, with your name, it can be, my name too, can be pronounced a couple different ways.
How do you pronounce your name in different ways, Sean?
Well,
Are you Cian?
a lot of people, if they don't know an Sean, Sean from somewhere else,
Right.
or especially in other countries, they're like, what is that? You know, and when you
I need to
say it
hear
out
the
loud,
different pronunciation.
yeah, I mean maybe Cian, but
Okay.
but a lot of times in other countries, especially, the sh like Sean sound they can't even pronounce it. They can't say it.
Oh.
It's like in the same way that we struggle to say certain German words or words that just don't roll off our tongue. Like that sound doesn't work for them very well. They
So what are your alternatives? Seen?
Yeah, I've been called that before.
You've been seen.
When I took Spanish class, like, you know, did you ever take Spanish in high school? And did you have a Spanish name?
I did.
Okay.
That was Juanita.
Of course you were.
What was yours?
Well, that's
You
the
were
thing.
Carmen.
There's no Sean equivalent.
This wasn't a Jamila equivalent.
Juanita.
That's just a J.
So I would get John. Because John and Sean were
Like Juan? Is that?
Yeah, Juan. Juan! Juan and Juanita. That's the new name of our show. Juan and Juanita. That's how we should introduce ourselves from now on.
That's our new names.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh. Okay, but names are important.
They are.
And okay, so back to this principle of I will listen intensely. Obviously, on the one hand, it's funny and it's maybe minor, and maybe those that are listening could even comment some of their strategies. We all need to learn from each other, so let us know what your strategy is.
You are speaking to a whole Jamila, which in any country that I've been in, except for, you know, those who my name is native to a land.
Right.
It's called Africa, right? And if people speak Arabic, then they're like, oh my gosh, do you know what your name means? And I'm like, I do. And so that's magical for me and them.
Right.
And there's two different pronunciations depending on where you're from. Specifically, even in Egypt, like people told me, if you're from this part, you say Jamila. If you're from this part, you say Gamila. And I was like, okay, cool. That's interesting.
Interesting.
Right? In England, a lot of times they would like Jamila.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're adding letters. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Just rolling a lot of
It's
things.
just Jamila. Jamila. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll start
And I
calling you
have.
Jamila.
And then there's people who do pronounce their name incorrectly, and they go by Jamila.
Yeah.
And they will correct you, but the original origin is Jamila.
Gotcha. So we're all clear on that.
We're clear. Clear.
So listening intensely, it's actually, we talked before about how to humanize other people.
Yes.
And learning someone's name and pronouncing it correctly is a way to humanize somebody.
Right, because we do know a lot of people from different cultures and countries, and when they come here, they're like, this is my American name.
Right.
Which really is just like, this is my way to soften and make it easy for American people.
Right.
So that they're not uncomfortable and they don't struggle with saying my name.
Right. Well, and I think we might have talked about this before, but it's so important, no matter who we are, it's not just an ethnic privilege, it's not just a political privilege. When you are in a place where people look up to you, it can be an age, whatever it is, whatever place or position you have an opportunity to get a name correct, it's a big deal. And it does speak dignity to that person, it elevates them.
Right.
And especially if it's a challenging name. I've found that it makes people feel even more dignified, that it was okay that I was embarrassed. I had to try a few times. Like,
yeah.
and
you've used that example before in Africa for you, but share it again.
Yeah, I mean, so in South Africa, exactly what you said. It's similar to when people they come to the U.S. Often they will pick an American name to make it easier on the Americans, rather than Americans choosing to lean into pronouncing whatever name that comes from. So in South Africa, they speak Xhosa. It's got that little clicky sound.
Yeah.
Xhosa.
Xhosa.
And so as Americans, English speakers, what they do is they'll even adjust the language to make it easier, which is kind of them. So the other way is just to say Xhosa. But the pronunciation is Xhosa.
Right, you gotta get the click.
You gotta get that little in there.
Yeah.
Xhosa.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine who is a good friend named Silas, Silas, that's his Christian, American biblical name. And that's how he introduced himself to me. We got to know each other over a few years. And then one particular summer we were back visiting with them. We were at somebody's house, and his girlfriend at the time, who's his wife now, she said something across the room, and then he replied back, and I was like, what did you just say? And she's like, I said his name. I was like, no, you didn't say Silas, you said something else.
Right.
And she's like, oh, Silas is his Christian name, but that's not his.
He put quotes.
Yeah.
Podcast.
And I was like, okay, so what did you call him? And she's like, his name is Nedo, with another click, Nedo, and it's actually spelled N-C-E-D-O. So even for English speakers, like, it doesn't even, like, how do you put an N before a C? Like,
you wouldn't.
It's because you got to do the Nedo.
Ah.
So I was like, I want to call him by his name, and so it took a lot of work.
You got on the struggle bus.
Yeah. But then there was another guy, a leader in the community at one of the townships, and his name was Ola. So in the same way that Xhosa has that little click, Ola. So again, Americans would just call him Cola. But when I heard somebody else say his name, I'm like, dude, that's not your name. He's like, that's how you pronounce. I tried. That's a hard click to get. Yeah. I'm sure I'm not even totally getting it right. Yeah. But the appreciation that he would literally smile when I would say his name in conversation, because he just felt the value. Because I think often the easy thing is to just not try, to give up. You don't want to be embarrassed.
Right.
And so it goes a long way to get those things correct.
Yeah. I do appreciate when people will try to say my full name. I do gift people Jay. I do love Jay as well as Jamila, pretty equal. And so, but there are people who, once they find out my name is Jamila, they're like, no, I want to say your name. I love your name. And I'm like, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with Jay as well.
So in last week's episode, we talked about how, for us, there's 6 United principles. There might be more. We might create more, but for now there are 6. And the first one is that I will learn to humanize others. And then a practical way that we're saying today that you can actually take action to humanize somebody is to get their name. Get their name right and remember it.
Yeah, like a lot of times, even at the nail salon, most of the time, where the places I go to, they're from Vietnam, and they will give me like the Annie, the Susan, and I'm like, what's your real name? And then sometimes they're hesitant because they're like, do we want to go there? Do you want to play this game? And I'm actually pretty good with language, and so I can pronounce things fairly well, and that is like life-giving.
Right. Will
I remember it the next time? Chances are low, but that's not because they're from Vietnam. Right. It's because I suck with remembering names.
Yeah.
But I'll do it again. I'll just try again.
Right.
Like, what's your real name? And then I'll call you that.
Yeah.
At least during our time.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think makes a lot of...
Humanize.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so humanizing, one of the simplest ways to humanize somebody else is to learn a name, and it's to listen to them.
Period.
And there's not a whole lot of that often in our country. When we talk about the pandemics of 2020, the way that we dehumanized and demonized others, it seems like one of the first ways that we've stopped humanizing others is to stop listening.
Yeah, I will absolutely cut you off, shut you
Yeah.
down, cancel you.
So why is listening or not listening so critical to uniting or dividing?
I think if you think about the inverse, what happens when you don't feel heard, you don't feel listened to, it's hurtful, right? And if I don't address my hurt, it can lead to anger, right? It can lead to all kinds of various things that will destroy relationships, or non-relationships, right? Like even just the potential for there's just no opportunity if I can't hear you anymore. Even just thinking about like, I can think about my own personal stories of like, what does it feel like when I know someone's not listening to me? And then also, what does it feel like when I'm being heard by someone who, and maybe it's challenging to hear, like, it's just challenging to hear like, you all right? You okay? Just edit this out. Sean.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. You want water?
I just swallowed coffee. I know it doesn't.
My daughter's struggling. I might need to go do the Heimlich here.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're
It's
okay.
okay.
I tried to hold it in, but I was like,
She was like, conceal,
Hey,
don't
we
feel.
want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah. No,
I'm
we
fine.
have.
Okay,
Ooh, I'm
you're
so
okay.
sorry.
It's okay.
She's good.
I was like, as long as you're listening and then listen.
Ow.
Yeah.
Listen.
I'm fine.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Take two.
Yeah.
Here we are. Right. So, so it can be hurtful when you're not being listened to, and something that happens, I think, a lot that's happening is if I don't agree with you, that's also an opportunity for me to be like, and then we're done listening.
Right.
I don't want to hear you anymore, or I believe I know what you're gonna say,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna listen to you.
Yeah.
So
That's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was recently going back over some notes from the classes that I took on diversity and inclusion with Cornell, and one of the things that jumped out to me was it was talking about how one of the ways that when you're in a group setting that you can make a difference in when it comes to dignifying and humanizing people through listening is to pay attention to, first of all, who is being invited to the table to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to a decision that's being made, you can take that on so many levels. Let's just start with a family situation. Obviously, there are decisions that parents make that only parents need to decide. But there are also decisions that can be made where you invite the kids, if you have kids, into the room and process, and it shows value and it elevates their sense of worth to have their voice heard on the decision. You take that into a work setting where one of the challenges in the class that was called improving engagement, or maybe it was unconscious bias, I can't remember, but one of the classes they were talking about how if you're in a room, one of the ways that you can pay attention to how the people, the staff, the employees are being humanized or maybe not heard is who speaks up the most, who feels like they can't speak up as much. Other things were, when do you notice credit being given? Is it always given to somebody who offered an idea, or does somebody else sort of restate somebody else's idea, and then the person who's convened that meeting, sort of who holds the power in that particular meeting, who do they give credit to? Do they give,
familiar.
And so a lot of that, it's simple, but it's powerful. The way that, even when we do USA Unites meetings and when we plan events, we've learned a priority that we have a value is let's make sure when we sit around a table, we have representation of all the types of voices that we want to hear from in what we're going to be talking about.
Or don't want to hear from.
Yeah.
No, for real. I mean, that's like the thing. It's easy to listen to someone who you like and who you're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's my friends, my people, right? But when it's someone who you know you oppose, or you're about to talk about a topic where you both deeply do not agree, I am more conflict avoidant, so I will sometimes be like, I don't want to go here, but I do know that it will give depth to the relationship, it will give depth to me as a person, if we go there,
Right.
if we get into the uncomfortable conversations where I will listen even if I don't want to.
Right.
And that's happened even in our relationship. There's times where I don't want to hear what you're saying because it's not going to be either stroking my ego or it's in opposition to something that I strongly believe. But then I will listen even if I don't feel like it. And it's been helpful. It's enriching.
Right.
It doesn't even always necessarily have to sway me. Like, I don't necessarily have to be like, I will change my ideas and life completely because of what you said. But what it will do is just help me to just hear another side to something, right? Or just hear you. That's it. It could just be, that's the goal. Hear you.
So some of the practical ways that we have talked to students in workshops about listening is, how do you know when someone's not listening? Just very practically, because we talked about, if you are in a position of authority where you can convene people together, one step is make sure that you first get the right voices in the room to be heard.
Right.
Okay, so now you've got the voices in the room, they're there, the people are present. How do you know when someone's not actually engaged or listening?
Yeah, so what we're asking, and that's the principle, right, is not to just, I will listen, right? We're saying, I will listen intensely.
Right.
Because you just...
Jet. He's listening.
He's listening. He's like, I am listening intensely. Okay, roof. Okay.
See, he likes what you're saying. He's like, talk more.
He's getting lit.
Yeah.
It's the eye contact. And we do talk about how different cultures view eye contact as well, right? For some people, it can be perceived as rude. Right. It can be perceived as disrespectful. It can be, it can either, and sometimes we talk about that with the kids because they have very varying degrees of comfortableness with eye contact. They're like, I feel like you're staring into my soul, which it can feel that way. It can feel very intimate when someone's looking in your eyes, right? But it can also be that of, I do want you to know that you have my attention. Right. So I'm looking at you. It doesn't even have to be like all up in the eyes. It could just be, I'm looking at your face. Right. And then there's also, because the phone has been an appendage for the kids, we deeply know when they're not listening because they're all up in the phone. Right. Or they're secretly in their phone, right? But those are ways to let me know that you don't value me as much when I can literally see you not. Right. Your body is like, sometimes their body posture, their positioning is away from, there's so many signs that I am not tracking with you. Or if I say something that does require you to say something back and you don't. Right. Those are some indicators.
Yeah, again, so because the humanizing, I will humanize others and I will listen intensely go so close together, one of the ways that we can reverse the way we're divided as a country in dehumanizing is, again, we always talk about the simplicity. It's redeveloping habits that maybe over time we've lost. Like when you're talking to somebody, like literally square your shoulders with them and don't just kind of look to the side. Make eye contact, not weird eye contact that's like, but let them know that you're paying attention. Right. If your phone vibrates, let it be. It's
unless you're on call,
right? We've even talked about how, one of the ways that you can raise the value of relationships is when you have your phone, which I don't have mine at the moment, when you're out to dinner with somebody or you're spending time with them, having your phone on the table
changes everything.
It does change everything. And I used to, from time to time, I'd be like, well, I'll have it on the table, but I'll flip it. And the flipping upside down shows that, like,
Like
this is more important.
Yeah, right.
But the phone is still there.
Right.
And I think it was Simon Sinek that was saying, you know, what we really need to do is get back to where the phone just is put away. We're going to sit and have a meal.
Right.
And for an hour and a half, I don't need to check my phone. It's not even going to be present.
Right.
And I've started to do that with people. And I've even noticed them look like, their body language is like, where's your phone?
Right.
And I've even noticed from time to time, they'll see that my phone isn't out and they'll put their phone away.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really
Sean does social
powerful,
experiments with his friends.
it's a really powerful action though,
Yeah,
that symbolizes
I'm
this
a
is
big
more
fan.
important.
I'm a big fan when people do not have their phone on the
Yeah.
table. My love language is quality time. And that's a quality kind of thing, right? That's a way to have quality conversation, quality communication is phone is gone.
Right.
Like out of sight, out of mind kind of a thing,
Yeah.
which I think is really powerful this day and age.
It is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, how are we doing on time?
We are doing really well. We actually probably have a lot more time, but we
Good.
don't have to just to talk, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to give people space to listen, to learn, to lean in and think about for themselves, like, where am I showing up in a way that like shows people that I'm really listening beautifully, and where am I not? Right? Because it doesn't always have to be like the all the way other side. Sometimes we're doing it really close to home.
Yeah.
Right? Parents to kids. I've even had that in my office where I was doing like a family counseling session one time, and it was a mom and a son, and they were both communicating whatever their issues were with one another. And I said, Mom, tell me what you heard from the son. She said something totally different than what her son had just said. She said something that she had heard him say some time ago.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. That was one of the issues, right? Like sometimes we can't hear people anymore because we think we know what they're going to say. So we just kind of tune out. And it's like, yeah, I heard you. Or sometimes people are on their phone and someone's talking to them and they're like, you listening to me? Of course I'm listening to you. And then I repeat what you just said.
Right.
And so then they're like, but you didn't hear me, right? Like you didn't feel me, kind of a thing. So there is a difference between like, I can just hear you and repeat what you said versus like, I understand what you're trying to communicate to me and I can identify the meaning behind the words.
Well, I think a lot of times too, we hear what we want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know I'm guilty of this, but I've also been in situations where somebody's talking and they're kind of communicating their thoughts on something, and the other person will say, what I heard you say was, and they'll repeat what they thought they heard the person say, and the person's like, no, that's not what I said. And you realize like, it's not just the words you use, the quantity, the clarity. There's also a filter that we as humans, we all have them. So sometimes I either wasn't listening very well, and so when I say back to you what I think I heard you say, I didn't hear you, like literally didn't hear you very well. So I'm just making something up.
Because of your filter.
Right.
Yeah.
Other times I did hear you, but I didn't like what you said. So I'm going to say back to you what I would prefer you have said.
Right.
You know, what I heard you say was, and then I'm just giving you my opinion back.
Right.
And then the person's like, no, that's not what I said.
You missed it.
Yeah.
But it's still good. That's a check.
Right.
I'm checking to see if I'm tracking with you.
Yeah.
Because then the person can either restate or they just say it a different way.
Yeah.
Right. But just that's a way to dialogue with someone with depth.
Yeah.
That's the quality kind of conversation. So yeah, that's how you listen intensely.
Right. Well, and I think another piece to it too that we talk about all the time with our training is listening intensely does not have to equate to agreeing with everything that's being said.
That's huge.
So often right now we're afraid to agree to disagree, that type of and yet again, as a country, whether it's masks, no masks, vaccines, no vaccines, Trump, Biden, like fill in the blank, parenting styles. There's so many ways that we divide. It's okay for us to have strong opinions and convictions that are different. The beauty of what we are after in a united America, not a divided America, is we will be stronger in our communities, in our families, in our workplaces, in our friendships, as we have relationships where we don't agree on everything.
Right.
We need that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's still plenty to agree on. And yeah, I just think what we're talking about is like you're giving richness and depth to relationships and to yourself. Like
Right.
you get to grow when you're challenged, not when everything is like, yes, we all agree with everything. Everything's wonderful because we're in agreement. No, you need opposition
Right.
in order to have like this healthy way of walking through things. Conflict avoidant behaviors and just trying to make sure that no one gets upset doesn't always work.
Right.
You know? So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank
Uniters. And moving forward, not only try some of the things that we have been talking about today, but again, post, comment, share other ideas that you have used for listening intensely.
Right.
It's a big deal. We have to walk together, learn together, and practice these things.
Yeah,
together.
because I do want to hear from people about like, if you want to share even just a little blurb about when you felt like you weren't heard, but also when you felt like you were. And just thinking about if you can lean in more to what does it feel like when someone's really listening to you, and then how do you gift that to someone else, right? I think that could be really powerful and beautiful.
That's right.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, share, all of those great things. And we'll see you next week.
Listen, learn, and mean it. Bye.